Hey, this is Teddy Atlas. We're watching Dante's Boxing Nation. Keep watching. Otherwise,
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? You know, I did a video a couple days ago and one of you guys left a comment in the comment section and basically said that ever since Mayweather left HBO, HBO is now dead. So I wanted to ask the question to you guys. Has HBO fallen since Mayweather left the network? Now, as you guys just heard in that clip that I just played for you, that was Steve Espinoza basically saying that while other networks, mainly referring to HBO, while they're doing budget cuts, Showtime is actually investing more money into the sport of boxing. And so far, it's been paying off because the only network right now that are doing the budget cuts are HBO. What's so ironic about that is, you guys remember, it wasn't too long ago that HBO, they used to dominate Showtime, all the way from video production quality to big name fighters and big fights. There was a time when the majority of all of the best fights were on HBO, and Showtime at one point, they almost looked like an ESPN. Don't get me wrong, they had better fights than ESPN, but compared to HBO, there was a time when HBO was just so dominant. That's how they made Showtime look. Now, Bob Arum, who works directly with HBO, he's been very open and honest when it comes to talking about the state of HBO's finances. In fact, it was Bob Arum that told the public the reason why we didn't get what would have been a great card on HBO, which would have been Nicholas Walters versus Lomachenko and Victor Postal versus Adrian Granados. The reason why we didn't get that fight was because HBO could not afford to put the fight on HBO. This is the reason why a lot of the type of mismatches we've been getting on HBO recently has been because they cannot afford to pay both fighters, or at least they can't afford to pay two big name fighters the same amount of money that they would have paid them a couple years ago. Case in point, Nicholas Walters versus Lomachenko. Now, we all know that both Lomachenko and Nicholas Walters are on the same level. Some would argue because Nicholas Walters has many more fights because he's undefeated. Some would say that he's on a higher level than Lomachenko. Some would say that Lomachenko is on a higher level. But no matter what your argument is, the bottom line is they both deserve to get paid around the same amount. You take Danny Garcia versus Robert the Ghost Guerrero on PBC, for example. When it came to them fighting against each other, Danny Garcia, he was the A side, but guess what? Both fighters were getting paid well over $1 million. But when it came to Lomachenko versus Nicholas Walters, according to Bob Arum, Lomachenko was supposed to get $800,000 or $850,000, and Nicholas Walters was supposed to get $500,000. Coincidentally, that's the same amount of money that they offered Guillermo Rigondeaux to fight Lomachenko as well, according to Team Rigo. Now, the reason why that salary doesn't make any sense at all is because Guillermo Rigondeaux, he got about $750,000 when he fought against Nonito Donaire. And now, for whatever reason, HBO and Bob Arum, they could only squeeze out $500,000 to pay Guillermo Rigo or Nicholas Walters to fight against Lomachenko. So let me ask you guys this question. Do you guys believe that if Lomachenko and Nicholas Walters were fighting for Al Haymon on the PBC series, do you guys think the fight would have happened by now? Most likely. If you look at a lot of the matchups on PBC, Adrian Broner versus Sean Porter, a type of fight like that would be very difficult to make. Matter of fact, it was difficult to make because there were a lot of stipulations and negotiations, and yet Al Haymon still got the fight done. The Mayweather versus Pacquiao fight, The reason why that fight happened had a lot to do with Al Heyman, and Floyd Mayweather will tell you that. So when it comes to HBO, they're in a little bit of a conundrum, a financial conundrum, where they can't pay these type of fighters the amount of money that they deserve, or at least they can't pay all of the fighters, the relevant fighters that deserve to be paid a certain amount. This also explains why we got Crawford versus Postal on pay-per-view. Now, there's a little bit of a misconception. A lot of people are under the impression that Bob Arum and HBO and even Team Crawford, they just all came together and they thought now is the time to tell people that you're a superstar and we're going to put you on pay-per-view. That's what a lot of people believe. So the point that I'm making is, unlike a Canelo Alvarez or Golovkin when he fought against Lemieux, promoter Tom Loeffler, which is Golovkin's promoter, and HBO, they put Golovkin on pay-per-view because they thought it was his time to shine. They thought that was the time for him to jump on pay-per-view and get about 300,000, 400,000 pay-per-view buys. That's not the situation with Terence Crawford. With Crawford, it was the contrary, because usually Bob Arum, he elects to put a fight on pay-per-view, like a Manny Pacquiao fight. He's choosing to put that fight on pay-per-view because he believes that he will make a nice profit off of it, with Manny Pacquiao being an established star for quite some time. But when it comes to Terence Crawford, Bob Arum was actually forced to put the fight on pay-per-view. Why? Because HBO could not fit it in their budget. They could not afford to put Crawford versus Postal on regular HBO. See, a lot of boxing fans were under the impression that if a promoter spends money to put a fighter on pay-per-view, they're actually spending more money to put that fighter on pay-per-view, maybe HBO and the promoter. And if that fighter is only fighting on HBO, then they're not spending as much money. But it's actually the contrary, as I learned this year with all the fights that didn't come to fruition on HBO because of these budget cuts. So when it comes to Floyd Mayweather leaving HBO, not only is Floyd Mayweather the biggest star in boxing, but he's the biggest athlete in all of sports. Floyd Mayweather has broken all of the pay-per-view records. Top 3, the biggest pay-per-view fights in history are all by Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather versus Canelo, Floyd Mayweather versus De La Hoya, and Floyd Mayweather versus Sugar Shane Mosley. And we know that Floyd Mayweather, he did those numbers because of his star potential. Because when Oscar De La Hoya fought against Manny Pacquiao, they didn't do the same type of numbers that Floyd Mayweather did when he fought Oscar De La Hoya or when he fought Manny Pacquiao. You see how it works? When Manny Pacquiao fought Shane Mosley, he didn't do the type of numbers that Floyd Mayweather did when he fought against Shane Mosley. So this just goes to show you Floyd Mayweather's drawing power. Matter of fact, Showtime, they really knew what type of drawing power Floyd Mayweather had, because they end up giving Floyd Mayweather the biggest sports deal in history just to sign him. I've even been told that they gave up their whole Strikeforce series just to invest in a deal with Floyd Mayweather. Now the question is, if Floyd Mayweather was that important to Showtime, why was HBO so disrespectful to Floyd Mayweather when he was signed under their network? I mean, when you listen to some of the stuff that Larry Merchant and Jim Lampley would continuously say about Floyd Mayweather, you would think that Floyd Mayweather was already working with a rival network. You would think this is a reason why HBO is treating Floyd Mayweather this way, is because maybe he's working with a rival network. But that was not the case. And you know what's so funny, because whenever I talk about the double standards that exist in the sport of boxing, and I talk about the fighters on the hope list, like fighters like Gennady Golovkin or Canelo Alvarez, there would always be at least one person that would post a comment and he would basically say, come on, it's obvious the reason why HBO treats Gennady Golovkin or Canelo Alvarez so well is because those are HBO's cash cows. This is all about money. That's why they treat him so well. So if we're using that logic, then it really makes no sense why they disrespected Floyd Mayweather so much. Because Floyd Mayweather was making HBO all the money in the world, right? If that is the case, you would think that HBO, they would damn near be on their knees praying to Floyd Mayweather every night. But that wasn't the case. In fact, they treated Floyd Mayweather like he was the least important fighter on the network. At least that's the way Jim Lampley and Larry Merchant would talk when they talked about Floyd Mayweather. Even though Floyd Mayweather, he was loyal to HBO forever, he was breaking all of these pay-per-view records, making HBO a whole lot of money. No matter what Floyd Mayweather did, HBO's Jim Lampley and Larry Merchant, they refused to give Floyd Mayweather any type of respect. Even though he was pound for pound, universally, undeniably considered #1 pound for pound best fighter in the world. I mean, Floyd was so undisputed when it comes to being the pound for pound king that even websites that hated Floyd Mayweather's guts, they still had him at #1. Matter of fact, this is how blatant and disrespectful HBO's Jim Lampley was when it comes to the fighter that was making all the money for the network Jim Lampley worked for. When Jim Lampley first got his TV show, this man could not wait to show his disdain and his personal hate for Floyd Mayweather. The very first episode that Jim Lampley did for his TV show, you could tell that Jim Lampley could not wait to plant this seed in all of the decaf's head and try their best to discredit Floyd Mayweather. I remember the very first episode because that's the only episode I ever tried to watch. It seemed for about maybe 10 minutes in the show that it was going to be a very impartial show. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Jim Lampley, he starts saying, you know, Floyd Mayweather is considered pound for pound, but if you really think about it, everyone that he beat was either too old, too small, or too inexperienced, etc., etc., etc. He just goes from there, right? And it's so funny because it came out of nowhere, and you can just tell that he had been wanting to say that on a big stage for a very, very long time. And of course, I could show you guys clips of what Jim Lampley actually said about all of Floyd Mayweather's opponents before the fight, or even in some occasions during the fight, where Jim Lampley was actually praising Floyd Mayweather's opponents before and during the fight, and once Floyd Mayweather beat them, then all of a sudden, he takes the credit away for Floyd Mayweather for beating him. Now, I can go much deeper into that, but that's for another video. Now, what really makes this situation so disturbing, well, there's a couple things that makes it disturbing, but for the sake of what I'm talking about now, what makes it so disturbing is the fact that Jim Lampley and Floyd Mayweather, they have something in common, which is what? They both represent HBO. You can almost look at it as them both being HBO employees. So with that being said, Jim Lampley's job is to elicit as many viewers as he possibly can to tune in and watch HBO fights. Here you have the biggest draw in all of boxing, and you're sitting over here basically telling people, don't tune in and watch this coward, this guy, he's overrated. You don't want to watch HBO to see this guy. He's not worth watching. Why don't you go watch Showtime where the real fights are? Because this Floyd Mayweather guy is a con, and you're going to waste your money watching him beat guys that are too old or too small or too inexperienced, etc., etc., etc. Do you guys know how much hate you have to have someone where you're willing to sink the whole HBO ship just to drown one guy? That is some serious ass hate. That is some serious ass hate. And something that makes the whole situation so ironic is now that Gennady Golovkin is one of the HBO favorites, you notice how even though, despite the fact that Gennady Golovkin, he doesn't make a fraction of what Floyd Mayweather brings in when it comes to pay-per-view buys. Despite Gennady Golovkin not really being a star, but HBO wants him to be a star, isn't it kind of funny that Jim Lampley has never gotten on his television show and said the same things about Golovkin? I mean, ain't it funny how he's never went on his show and said, you know, Gennady Golovkin, all of his opponents are either too inexperienced, too old, or too small. He's never done that, has he? Maybe it's just a coincidence, right? Maybe it's just a coincidence. So with that all being said, karma is something else. Because now, once again, you have Floyd Mayweather, who left HBO to make Showtime some ridiculous money. And now, who's the ones doing the budget cuts? Who's the ones that can't even afford to put some of the most meaningful fights on regular TV? It's HBO. And you know, I want to make it really clear. As a boxing fan and a reporter, I want all TV networks, all promoters, all advisors and managers, I want all of them to be successful. Why? Because that means we get to see the best fights possible, right? We get to see all of the fights that we're supposed to see. Once again, for example, if it was up to Bob Arum, we would have got a great doubleheader. Victor Postol versus Adrian Granados. And in the main event, Nicholas Walters versus Lomachenko. Right? I want to see those fights. So I don't care what channel they're on. I don't care who's promoting it. I want to see those fights. I'm not going to be like the decafs when it comes to Al Heyman, where you're sitting at home praying every night that the fucking ship sinks and you don't care how many people drown on the boat as long as Al Heyman is one of the people who get drowned. That's how decafs think. That's not how a real boxing fan thinks. So with that all being said, it is what it is. You know, HBO, they're definitely on the decline. We'll see if they can recover. They still have, you know, fighters like Gennady Golovkin, Andre Ward, Sergey Kovalev, and Terrence Crawford. But they're going to have to come up with the money to put these big name fighters in the ring with big name opponents and do it consistently. We'll see what happens. That's all I got for now. I'm on to the next one.
Still working. What's up, Roger?
The most sensational. Ellie in the nation. I see y'all. Ellie in the nation.
There we go.